Today, I'm very excited because I have a person and a topic near and dear to my heart. And even just the thoughts of it bring tears to my eyes or like make my heart pitter patter a little bit more. So, Trisha, I'm just going to dive in a little bit. Yesterday, I was at an acupuncture session and with my healer. So she was like talking to me, and we were talking about death and cancer and my dad. And then I don't know how she got on the subject of this, but she's like, I guess she was talking about sharing stories and holding or offering healing space. And she told me, she's like, every time that I have someone come in here with breast cancer, I always think about this one woman that told me this story or this, how she felt about all of the opinions and stuff that she gets from other people. She said that the woman told her, all of my girlfriends have opinions on this or that. And the only person that I want to hear advice from is someone who has been through it and someone who has walked the path. And I just think that that speaks leaps and bounds because I know you're birthing your story into the world. And so welcome, Tricia Totten,
Thank
flexing
you.
after cancer.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you. Sharing my story has been healing for me from day one. And I'm just hope that I am sharing what will inspire and motivate and help bring others who are going through breast cancer into a good, solid space with themselves and with
Mhm.
everything that they have to endure.
Oh, I have full confidence in your ability to do that. Cancer has affected both of our lives in different capacities. I lost my dad to liver cancer. You've been through breast cancer and now are on the other side of it. I'm hoping that this episode also offers a conversation for support for loved ones of both sides. Like,
Yeah.
kind of in a way, if I were talking about my dad's journey and how I felt and experiences through that, and then maybe how you would talk to your family or kids or loved ones, or any of those people that you would offer want to support to that have maybe just been diagnosed or want to
Right.
offer support for the loved ones in that scenario.
I love it. I love it because I feel like it is a area that is not talked about a whole lot. I feel like it's kind of a neglected piece of it all, and I think it's a very important one. And I don't think I really even have had time or opportunity to really step back and say, well, what were my loved ones going through? I know it had to
Mm-hmm.
be hard. And it wasn't until you and I kind of started talking about it that I go, it was a light bulb. And I go, gosh, I don't know that when we talked about the moment that I shared my story or shared the diagnosis with my kids, neither my husband or I can remember exactly the moment that we told them. And I think it was so hard for us to find the words. I mean, there must have been some kind, trauma associated with we subconsciously
Mm-hmm.
buried that moment in time. So I'd be very curious. I feel like when we told my son, because they weren't together, Sean was at
Mm-hmm.
UT and my daughter had just graduated, so she was here in Houston. So I feel like we had to tell them separately. And I think I can remember more telling my son in his dorm room. And I feel like it was here in the kitchen that we told my daughter, but I can't remember the exact
Mm-hmm.
moment in time. I know that right after I got diagnosed, and I'm sorry, right after I found out that this was real. We talked about this, mortality. You
Mm-hmm.
immediately go to mortality, and it's like I started thinking, what does that really even mean to me? Because I think it is something different for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
depending on your upbringing, what you believe,
Mm-hmm.
So for me, all I could think about was because for me, I'm not afraid to die, so to speak. I do believe in eternal life. I do believe in a heaven of some sort. But the thought of leaving my kids, that is what, that is you can't even put into words.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that for you being on the other end, I feel like we can have a really intimate conversation
Mm-hmm.
about how that was for you on the receiving end of
Mm-hmm.
all of this, and how your worst nightmare obviously came to reality. And if we can share our stories together and help other
Mm-hmm.
people figure out a way to connect during this precious time, because time is the biggest thing that was on my mind the minute I was diagnosed. Time.
Mm-hmm.
It has never meant the same to me from that moment.
Yeah.
So I know that your father felt the same. And I know that every moment that he spent with you, he considered it a blessing.
You know, I mean,
So,
even speaking to
yeah.
that brings tears to my eyes because I had never looked at it through that lens. Uh, like the day that I found out, and I'll expand on the story of that moment, but just having the idea or notion. I know that there were several, things throughout his journey that I know he wanted to protect me or make me not worry, but for him to have those same thoughts and that just really is heartwarming, and
Our
there's just so
children
much love.
are the most precious things. I mean, they are truly a gift. And I didn't regret, I was a stay at home mom. And you have this moment where it's like just in the movies where you have a flash of your life, kind of go through your mind. You see all of this, and it's just like one big blur. And I had a big hunk of my time at home with my kids.
Mm,
And that was the most precious thing to have and to hold in my heart as I went through all of this, because I had no regret.
mm-hmm.
Being a mom, I realized at that moment how much I loved being their mom. It was just like, every minute that we had, I was room mom, and I was like, what do you call it? A
Like
helicopter, actually special ops helicopter parent.
special.
I mean, I was there. I was the first one in line to pick them up from school. I was, lunch, I take them lunch 3 days a week, and, walk it into the, front, what do you call it? The office, and wait for them
Mm-hmm.
to come get it. And, so, and I loved every minute of that. And that was one of the most beautiful gifts to have to hold on to.
I think that also not only does that help support cancer and loved ones and people affected by cancer, I think it also gives just like a little extra support for stay-at-home moms, because I feel like that's the hardest job in the world to raise, um, you know, children into the world. And I don't know what all goes into that. I was only on the receiving end of it, but to
Well,
like have them be, I'm not, the word I want to say is like
it's
quality
a thankful,
adults, but like, but like with all the tools and there's tool belt that they need and
yes,
to feel loved and supported along the way so that when they leave the nest, they'll be able to fly and all of that.
right.
And I think that a lot of times stay at mom's job is overlooked or is not given as much
Oh yeah,
weight or credit
right.
that it deserves. And so I just love that you
Absolutely.
highlight that too. I love to share both of our like diagnosis stories too, or like the day that our lives changed
Yes.
in different manners. So if you want to start with yours, I'll share mine after.
So I had like part one and part two of
Mm,
the day I found out, because I actually found the lump at a well woman checkup. Everything was going fine, and she was finishing up her exam, and she felt the mass on my left breast, and she's like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, well, you need to go get that checked out like yesterday. And
mm,
so she was aggressively making sure I got all the right, phone numbers and contacts and everything. So she got us in there. And so in a couple of days, well, as soon as she found that, I remember calling Jeff. And this was kind of significant, because I think we need to recognize that we all handle this stuff in our own way.
yeah.
Every single person in your family is going to handle it differently, because,
Mm-hmm.
and it may surprise you at how everyone uniquely handles their piece of it. I immediately think we both went into self-protection mode, but I was like, I need to wrap my head around this, because this might be real.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that, you know, what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? So I started with, this might be real. My husband started with, no way, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
This is not, so that was his mindset. He was in that self-protection, in denial. I was in acceptance of, okay, this might be real. You need to figure out how this is going to work. So when we found out that it was, he was not ready. He like lost it. And I will never forget the look on his face. It was a look that I had never seen him look so scared. And our entire, I mean, at that point, we were probably married 20 years. So it was hard to watch because I saw fear and I saw love at the same time. And it was beautiful and scary at the same time. I was already somewhat prepared for it. So he got very emotional and I was like comforting him at that point. It's going to be okay. We got this. It's early. So that was kind of it in a nutshell. So it was all very fast. It was all, you're inundated with emotion and you're trying to process, and how am I going to tell people? So
How long did y'all wait
yeah.
to tell?
It was only a couple of days.
Yeah.
Oh, to the kids? I'm sorry.
Yeah, to the kids.
That's what we can't remember.
Oh, yeah. That
It's
is
like
interesting.
we don't remember. I really would like to. I haven't asked them yet. I wanted to do the podcast first and maybe share it with them and see if they want to fill in the gaps. I'm not going to press them for it. I feel like I want to respect them in that way. I do feel that it would be helpful to kind of maybe go back in time and try to remember some of that stuff. But, it's their journey and with it. And I don't want to push if they're not ready to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's respectful too.
So tell me how
yeah. So I'll say a couple of things. Like one, I was always worried about my dad's health growing up. Like I would, be riding in his 18-wheeler. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be there. I don't know, but I felt like a big girl because I got to ride with him in his big truck. But he would smoke sometimes. I'm like, Dad, that's not good for you. So I just, and there's an interesting intuitive knowing, and I don't know if it's because I believe we kind of maybe have signed up, made some agreements before we came into this lifetime about how to help and heal the world together. Then of course, like when you're born, you forget about it. That I had a sense that he was going to leave me early. That could be also ancestral because he lost his dad at 14. And so I don't know if there's just like some kind of something in the cells or DNA that's what, I don't know. But I was living in LA at the time. I want to say it was the beginning of 2011, a little bit further ago, 2011. And he had called me a couple of times and I was like, that's odd. Like my dad was like, we would text, we would call, but to call me twice back to back and leave a voicemail, I was like, that's odd. Like something's up. And so from what I remember, I was on the beach and I called him and he was like, hey kiddo. And like, we were talking about the Super Bowl or something like that, just kind of, I'm like chatting about football. And I'm like, what's really going on though? And he's like, so I went to the doctor and they found a couple of tumors on my liver. And I was like, I just like kind of stopped in my tracks. I was like, tumors? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, tumor? I was like, is it cancer? And he's like, well, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and looks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And then I just remember like hearing that, and it's like everything went black and white. Like life lost its color, life lost a bit of its luster. I immediately was like, I started crying. He's like, don't cry. I'm like, you're my dad. And then I think, I can't remember if we chatted for what we may have chatted about afterwards, but I immediately like hung up the phone and went to my apartment building. And I was like, I need to transfer my lease back to a complex, a property, a sister property of theirs in Dallas. And then I was like, my dad has cancer. And that was the first first time I'd ever said that word
Said
or
it
said it
out loud.
aloud. Yeah. And by the time I had collected myself by then, but when I said that word, I burst into
Yeah.
tears. And, and then, so within 2 weeks, I was like back in Dallas and I just wanted to spend as much time as possible and support through the treatment how I could in
Mhm.
some ways. And in some ways, like also deny it probably. Cause I never asked what type, I mean, not what type, but like how bad or what stage. I don't think I wanted to know the answer. And I don't think it was like just freely given because he didn't want me to be worried either.
I think that's exactly what it was. Don't think my kids ever really pushed to know more about what it was. I don't know if they Googled, of course, anything on the side, but to me, they never said, tell me more about this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we were, to hear you share your story, I feel like maybe we all want to protect
Like,
ourselves and we want to protect each other.
and
And
kind
so
of go
we're
into
all,
denial.
yeah, so we're all self-protecting. We're self-protecting. We're trying to
Mm,
protect because I know they wanted to protect mom too. They didn't
mm-hmm.
want mom to worry about them.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
I think they said that even, both of them at different times, but they didn't want me to worry about them. They wanted me to get better. And so they didn't really inquire a whole lot about everything that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
They did not go with me to doctor's appointments or, any of the chemo treatments. And I didn't expect, like I said, Sean was still finishing out his, I think he was a junior at the time at UT, and Taylor was just starting a new job. And so, and I had Jeff. So my husband, he was like, he would not let me go to an appointment by myself.
Mm,
So I was very blessed in that way.
mm-hmm.
But I find it interesting how that's love. I mean, that is
Mm-hmm.
how awesome it is. And it's unfortunate that so many people wait until something like this happens in their family to really see what we mean to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that might be one of our messages here to everybody who may have not experienced it in your
Mm-hmm.
life. If it hasn't touched your life right now, take the opportunity to start doing all the right things. Start
Yeah.
practicing the gratitude to make sure that you put your priorities are, your
Mm-hmm.
priorities are in line with what is important to you. And, at the end of the day, you can ask yourself, I mean, when you go to bed at night, what is the most important thing to me? Did I
Mm-hmm.
address those things? Did those people hear from me? Do I
Mm-hmm.
know that they're all okay?
So
Um,
true. And I
yeah.
remember reading something or listening, watching a video or gathered the information somewhere, and it really made me put a little things in perspective, especially like with mainly seeing my family around like holidays or maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Let's just say
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 times just for like maybe easy calculations. But they're like, if you have them for X amount of years left, just say like the average is what, 75, 80 years or
Yes,
something.
we've done that. I know my number.
Then
My,
you have then you have these special moments. I bet you do
I have
because
my number. My number is
what,
about 8,000. My husband's is about, what is his, like five
mm-hmm,
something, five or
mm-hmm,
six. So yeah, it puts
it,
things in perspective. And then when you think about, for me, my parents have exceeded the age that
mm-hmm,
life expectancy. So every day is truly a freaking gift. And so
yeah,
I am fortunate to be close and make sure that I get over there and see them. And because I know
mm-hmm.
it's like that number is not very big.
I know
So,
my grandma's 94, and every time I
yeah,
go back to spend time with her and play games or just hang out, I'm like, put the phone down, soak up every moment. If you're going to have the phone nearby, just have
you
it on
have
a
to be
recording.
intentional.
Yeah, maybe to record some of the stories or conversations.
Yeah,
But
that's
you
what you
have to
should
be,
do.
yeah.
That would be a really good idea, especially as a writer. I would
Mm-hmm.
definitely start doing that, because
Yeah.
we forget. I mean, we don't forget the love. You don't forget how that love made you feel, but you forget some of the stories. They just,
Hmm.
there's just so much in our brain we can hold and recall, I think. So that's important to
Yeah.
do.
I think so too. And like, I've started to write down some of her stories, but I want, yeah. And it's like some with my dad too, especially because it is my dad's mom that is still alive, like, 94. And so that's been an interesting, journey to go on together too, having lost her son, having me lost my dad, and being there that day together too. It definitely, in a way, it brought us closer. Um, I would say that. Is
To
there,
your dad or
to my grandma. Like I
to
was
your
all,
grandma?
yeah, I was always close,
Yeah,
but to have that shared experience of loss and to be there in those like crucial moments, especially towards the end, because it was mainly like her, me, and then my dad that would go, and I guess maybe some of his wife at the time on some of the
yeah.
treatments and stuff. But I'm curious, like if there was any other way that you would have wanted to be supported in that moment, um, by, but beyond loved ones. Maybe it's friends, maybe it's like close circle or community.
You know, I've thought about this, and truly, the thing I needed most was space.
Mm,
I needed space to process internally what was going on. I needed to be able to tap into what we need the most. And what we
mm-hmm,
need the most at that time is to go inside and find our inner strength. Because
mm,
without that, all the support from the outside won't matter. We
mm,
got to go inside. We got to find that strength, that courage, that determination, that person that we were created to be, because we are all created with strength and
mm-hmm,
endurance and faith and hope. All of that is inside of us. And most of us spend our lives going through all these little things in life, all these little setbacks and all these
mm,
little, distractions and hurts and hurtful moments and all of that stuff builds that resistance inside of us. So I had to go and find that Trisha inside
mm-hmm.
and go, okay, she's been through some shit.
Yeah.
She's been through some shit. I mean, it's not, and I had a blessed life, don't get me wrong. Beautiful childhood. Was it perfect? No. But I went through things that everybody goes through. We all go through those bad
Mm-hmm,
relationships that feel devastating, and we've had our hearts broken, and we've climbed our way back up, and we've you
mm-hmm,
know educated ourselves, and all those things that nobody can take away that we talk about. I think there's a quote or saying, work on the things that can't be taken away, because those are the things that you need in a crisis like cancer. Those are the
mm-hmm,
things. My workout routine, my determination, everything I learned by working out, everything that I'd learned, in nursing school by educating myself, everything that I'd learned by figuring out the best way to be a parent. And not that I was perfect, because I made a lot of mistakes, and I want to make sure my kids know I recognize I made a lot of mistakes, and in my marriage. But I had to go find that first.
mm-hmm,
And that space, in the same way that you need that space to unload. I needed
mm,
to be able to say all of these negative feelings that were the feelings of victim, being a victim in all of this, and sadness and fear. I needed a place to just dump it
yeah,
without being judged.
mm,
And they gave that to me.
mm,
They probably didn't even know they were doing it. So I want to make sure they know now. In retrospect, I had all of that. They were
mm,
all very good. My friends, my immediate family, my husband, my son, my daughter, my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, my friends, my Instagram followers. It was they were all doing exactly what they needed to do in social media. They gave me the
mm-hmm,
space to share my story. They rallied there. They supported me. They were so encouraging. So that's what I needed the most. I
mm-hmm,
needed that space to be able to be free with my feelings,
mm,
to
mm,
be to have the option of whether or not I wanted to talk about it, which, we
Mm-hmm.
usually do that for our loved ones. But I've said it before. I think I've about how we just can't not try. You
Mm-hmm.
can't be afraid to feel it out because we're all different. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going to be the way I just explained. You're going to have to just not be afraid to questions, and not don't be afraid if you don't get the answer that you're looking for, because
Mm-hmm.
in those moments when you're trying to process these feelings of fear and when you're in all those dark places, you don't know how to process this. Nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to recognize too. There's no perfect way to deal with cancer as the loved one, as a caregiver, or as the patient. There's
Yeah.
no right way,
Just
and
do our best. Try our
yeah, you
best.
have to do your best
Just try our best.
every
Give it our
day.
best shot.
Yeah, give it your
Yeah.
best.
I remember going home and been like hightailing it home to like get to my dad. But I also didn't want him to think that I thought of him any differently, like any less strong, any less like Mr. can fix anything in the world for
Yeah,
me, Mr. Pillar of support. And I kind of intuitively or maybe thought, and maybe this was a
it's
combination of
interesting.
like thought that I didn't want to make him talk about anything that he didn't want to talk about or me look at, or have those feelings. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go spend time with him. This first time I'm going to give him at least one more time without talking about cancer or mentioning the C word or like asking about,
Right.
the process or the journey, and like just like really soak up the time that we had. We like rode his Harley and went to get ice cream and just like tinkered around and hung out and like chatted about like probably my love life or something and chatted and chatted, yeah.
Yeah.
And because I think at the time he asked me if I was still dating grandpa and so
Oh
which is
God.
a guy that was older than me and just being like our little selves and then just really soaking it up because I was like I want to give him that freedom to like live in that it maybe it's not true and maybe I also wanted to be in that moment that it wasn't true at least one more time because then after that it was like how you feeling and like treatments and what and being hopeful for being on the donor or that sort of thing and kind of like navigating that over the next 2 years.
So
um
it was 2 years.
yeah 2011 to 2013.
And then you stayed in the area for those 2 years?
For most of it, actually,
Yeah.
like towards the end of in January or February of 2013, I went and had a conversation because I had a yearning to go back to California and continue like pursuing my storytelling dreams. And
Yes.
so I went and I was like, Dad, I want to talk to you about something. And the first time I went, he was like, "You're going to the land of the fruits and nuts. Like, I'm never going to see you again," and all this stuff.
A
And
true East Texan,
yeah,
right?
yes, and conservative like the whole nine. But like just like a grumpy old man.
Right.
and, and like product of his childhood and raising. But
Yeah.
but then I want to go back to him to talk to him the second time and he's like, Kristen, sometimes you have to do things without worrying about making everybody else happy. And I was like,
That was
ooh,
beautiful.
that might be some of the best advice my dad's ever given me.
Aw.
Basically, his blessing. And, in that time, there's so much people pleasing in my life. I didn't see it. He maybe saw that I was like doing those different things or
It's
earning
awesome.
love or that sort of thing. But it was a blessing. And then so I moved. And then within a few weeks, I got the call that, we had a conversation that he was going to come out and bring his motorcycle. And we were going to go up PCH and that sort of thing. But within like a week or two after that phone call, my grandma called me and was like, you might want to come home soon. And I was like, well, what is soon? And soon could be tomorrow. Soon can be like a month from now. And she's like, well, he's not eating. And I knew that when she told me that he wasn't eating, that it was sooner than I ever wanted. And then so I
Right.
hopped on the next plane, like 6 a.m. flight and flew. And then again, like hazard lights driving to get there.
Did you notice any significant changes in his personality during that time? I mean, I wonder if there's things that I was changing about myself during that time. And was there anything that you were like,
Mm.
okay, this was it?
For me,
Was he?
yeah. I
Yeah.
noticed things like a couple of times, especially like the last 6 months to a year. Like when I would notice that he started opening up more and telling me more
Yeah.
about his childhood, or more just like, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Like my dad's like been this, still waters run deep, but but
Right.
he but he was just like very reserved, and like didn't really like tell me a bunch. I always longed to hear all of his stories. My mom had always given me hers, and like I would be just like, one more, mama, just like tell me more. So I wanted all of his, and I don't know if he was proud of all of his, because they were a little rough around the edges, little rebel, and
Yeah.
like got that honestly from somewhere. And but I will say, I gave him this book to fill out, and it's my most prized possession that I have, and I have it like right above my
Mm.
desk right here, and it's this little book of stories and questions that he could handwrite, because I
That's
was like,
awesome.
maybe it'll be easier for him to write it than speak it. I know it's easier for me to write it, or at least, especially that was especially true then. Like it's gotten easier for me to speak speak into my emotions now.
Mm.
But and so like on my birthday, the year I guess before he died, he gave it to me, and like I read it. I still have like profound moments when I read and open it. Like the other day, I don't know if I told you that I opened it. My whole life, I was like wanting to make him proud, and like I would get good straight A's, and I just had this sense of like I want him to be proud of me. And then there's a question in that book that's like, what were some of the things that made you the most proud, or what you're most proud of about your life, and that sort of thing. And he said, the day that my brother and I were born, and the day I graduated college. And then I just had a moment. I was like, huh, I never had to earn any of that pride. He was proud of me from birth.
Right?
Great. Yeah.
And then we
Um,
take for granted that our kids know that. I
yeah.
guess because you would think that they knew that. You should have known that.
Yeah. No, no, I do. But, and that's in some ways, I will say, and I just want to speak into this, that in some ways, my dad and I's relationship has grown leaps and bounds since his death. Like I learned different awarenesses that came up, like that I was projecting a sense of, not accepting or that sort of thing. But I had to accept myself. Like he had seen me for who I was the whole
Starts
time.
with
And
us.
yes, it
It
totally
starts
starts with
inside
us.
of us. I mean, and I'm 59, Kristen, and
Hmm.
I am still uncovering childhood suppressed crap.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I mean, these light bulbs go off, and I'm like, holy shit, that's why I do that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm fortunate that, and we all, as women, we all want
Hmm.
to have that pleasing our dad
Mm.
gene. We
Yeah.
all want to please daddy. And I've never questioned that he's been proud of me, but there was just things about our relationship because we're so much alike, you know,
Hmm.
um, that we always, as a teenager,
Mm.
and now it's funny because we sit at dinner and we'll have the same weird kind of habits. We're both like
Hmm.
spraying our hands with we're very germaphobes, and it's very cute that way. But,
Hmm.
it's beautiful and that's, I think, when I speak about love and its existing, I don't think it ever goes away. And you are
Mm-mm.
speaking exactly to that. You're actually growing closer to your dad after
Hmm.
he's passed this
Oh
life.
yeah. I
And
mean,
I believe that it's not going to stop here. I think
mm-mm.
as you continue to grow and age, you'll start realizing different things. And I think every
Hmm.
single time you read that book, it'll mean something different to
Oh,
you.
for sure. And then I just get these little moments. I read this book called Signs, and it's about creating relationships with people that passed on, and or like asking for signs. And so I have this agreement that every time I hear Credence Clearwater, I know he's with me, because he would always play that in his shop, like while he's tinkering on things.
Yeah.
And of course now it's like some of my favorite songs, those oldies that I used to hate growing up that we listened to all the time. Like I absolutely love now. And I'm like, of course, but I had a shit day on Monday. I mean, just one of those days where it's like, I was like, ugh, like frustrating. And, I found a new boundary because I like crossed it with myself and I was like, no. And so, but I go to Target to get a couple things. And then faintly on the intercom or like music
You heard the song.
yes. And I was like, thank you. I was like, it just brought tears to my eyes. It's like, thank you. And whether that's like true or not, or me making up things or assigning meaning to things, it's whatever. It's what makes me walk this path a little lighter and
Yes,
with more love.
I
And
completely,
so
I
people
think
can
that
discredit or they can give it credit. It works for me.
exactly, exactly. Oh, I believe in that. I mean, every time I see, my grandmother loved birds, and
Mm.
I mean, the week she passed, I mean, would see these very out of, aren't typically in our yard, but I saw like a crane and a duck,
Mm.
and
Oh
I'm like,
wow.
my grandmother's coming to see me.
Yes. And then did she pass from natural causes or cancer
Yes,
or?
she was 99.
Okay. Oh,
She was 99. So
99.
she was
Yeah.
99 and lived
Dang.
by herself for the last 30 years or something like that.
Wow.
She lived alone.
Wow.
She was amazing.
Yeah.
She was
Wow.
amazing.
A little firecracker. And speaking of like the death, I mean, like, did you go there? I know we spoke briefly before and like not on this podcast of how like being brought to those like moments and critical moments with cancer can be like put lighting kerosene on a fire for life. And like
Mhm.
making us more appreciative for the times that we have. Did you think about your death? Did it prep you for it? Did you?
Immediately,
Yeah.
immediately. That is the first thing you think of. And it's kind of weird. I think I almost went into they talk about nesting for
Mm-hmm.
when you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I started nesting again because that was probably exactly what it was. I wanted, you got these boxes of all my kids' school work and
Mm-hmm.
their artwork and all their little handprints from kindergarten and, all
Mm-hmm.
these little things and photo albums. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't even have them in photo albums. They were just boxes of photos that I had all over the place. And it was like, okay, I need to go through all of these photos. I
Mm-hmm.
organized them. I made photo albums. I went through these boxes and tried to separate what's not, keepable. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the school stuff that I was like, okay, you got to keep this. And I shrunk it down a lot because I wanted it to be something that they could store easily and not a lot of clutter.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing things like that, but I was like, okay, I'm doing this because I was getting ready for the
Mm-hmm.
worst. If I don't
Mm-hmm.
make it this year, I remember I did a lot of, to my knees bargaining, when you do that,
Mm-hmm.
if you just give me more time, I want to see Sean graduate. I want to see Taylor, just keep succeeding at work and just become a beautiful woman and all of that stuff. And so, yeah. And again, it comes back to I just didn't want to leave them.
Yeah.
You don't want to leave. And I know that that was the scariest part that your dad had to feel. It wasn't
Yeah.
about, I didn't know him. I know what you've just told me, and I know you. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that I don't think he was afraid to die. He was
Mm-hmm.
afraid to lose you and leave
Mm.
you and your brother. The thought of you needing him and him not being here is what
Mm.
is
Mm.
terrifying. So I think you need to reflect on how proud he must be of you and how much you are doing for this world. And I mean, just the person that you are becoming. I
Thank you. I
think you need
appreciate that.
to, and that should bring you closer to him too.
It's
Because
interesting that you say that, and I'll receive those flowers. But I wrote a list of, because sometimes I don't give myself as much credit as like I feel like I need to, or that other people say or give me. And then I wrote a list of
I
like,
don't either.
I wrote a list of awards and accolades and just things that I've done or trainings and accomplishments, and I was like, shit. I've done a lot more than I'd give myself credit. And that's another thing she said in that session yesterday. It was like an acupuncture slash massage slash healing Reiki session.
Oh,
Fantastic at
wow.
Alive and Well. Like, yeah, highly
Oh,
recommend. Yeah, yeah, her name
I
is
need to do
Cindy.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's great. Um, I'll share the contact information with you. And she's like, your dad was so proud. Like, how can you think any different? And she told me this beautiful story of how, whenever she was giving birth to her children in the room and like there's people there and like everyone's like, oh, he's here, he's here. Whenever she
Yeah.
gives birth to her son, like, da da da. She's like, I think it's just like that on the other side. He's here and loved ones are there and like, da, da, da. And I just loved that imagery and just about
Beautiful.
like the afterlife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so that
Love
just
it.
like gave me, because I will say, I've had a lot of loss in my life and like a lot of
Me too.
meetings with death. And so I'm with you that feel like I don't fear death, or maybe I fear like the type of dying in some ways. If it's, I don't want it to be painful or, or that sort of
Right.
thing.
Right.
Or how my loved ones would feel when I'm gone. But as far as like the actual dying or like beyond death, like I don't fear that. Um, and I think now things are becoming clearer and more to the surface. That I'm helping people like through that process. Like with my neighbor who lost his wife a year and a half ago. Like we share
Oh,
time and space together, and he lost his wife to cancer, and he's opening up to me and being emotional. I'm like, okay, this is part of the reason why one of the gifts I think I found through grief is to be able to offer space in that capacity,
yes.
and that's a
And
gift that my
that's,
dad gave me.
yes.
And I don't know exactly where I was going with this, but I guess, death.
Uh-huh.
I would say I was prepping myself in some ways, like for the day that he was going to be gone. But the no amount of prepping that I did prepared me for that moment.
No,
Whenever like
it
I'm hearing
doesn't.
the death rattle, and like he comes to for a little bit, gives me his token smile, goes back under, and then the physical loss of him. And I will say he was very determined to communicate his love even in the afterlife too, because he came to me in dreams. He came to me in
Mm-hmm.
like golden apparitions, and I was stone cold sober in my apartment. And like, I mean,
Yeah.
which is a valid question and for my life of choices. But yeah, I woke up feeling like someone was in my apartment one night and there's a 6'5" golden apparition. And I was like, wow, just kind of faded off into the ethers.
If love, if we are energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we're energy and energy is never lost,
True.
where do we go?
Yeah, I think it's
That's why I'm saying
transference.
I
Yeah.
still feel my grandmother. I mean, I'm not saying that she's a ghost walking around. I don't believe that. I
Yeah.
believe that there's something that we can't even wrap our minds
Mm-hmm.
around. There's something we can't conceive in that spirit, for lack of a better. I mean, what
Mm-hmm. I
else would
love
you?
spirit. Yeah.
There's something that's there, and I think that we just have to remember that. If when we lose a loved one, we have to remember that we can still keep them near and dear to our heart. We can keep them alive by talking about them
Talking
and
about them. Yes,
remembering them.
please.
Yeah, like how you're talking about your dad. I mean, he's still alive. How can we
Yeah.
say he's
Yeah.
not?
No,
His presence
exactly.
exists in this moment. He is irrelevant,
Mm-hmm.
in this moment, in
You
this
know,
conversation.
and this conversation, and I think in some ways, like sharing so much of our story in my book was a way, like he didn't have the opportunity he didn't make the choice or take the time to write his book or share his story or leave his mark on the
Yeah.
world. But, through my sharing of the
Yeah.
story, like now there's a piece of him that will live on in
Yes.
history and have his legacy shared,
And
which I
yeah.
think is a beautiful part of storytelling. And I wish
Yes.
that I would say that with cancer and grief and dying, I would have loved the opportunities to speak about him more or share those memories in the beginning. I feel like sometimes people tiptoe around some of those subjects,
Yes,
and
they do.
like and it's probably coming from a good place of not wanting to harm or induce anxiety or
They just don't
something.
know it.
But
They
yeah,
don't know. And that's
yeah,
why this podcast is so important,
hmm,
that we bring attention to it. It's just
yeah,
one of the things in the breast cancer community, in the cancer community, that
hmm,
I'm connected with on social media and just people that I talk to. Nobody knows what to say and what they
hmm.
want to be helpful. That's the bottom line. Everybody wants to be helpful. They just don't know how. And the
Yeah.
answer is nobody knows how either. You just have to try.
Try
That's
even
just the thing.
saying
You
that.
have to try. You
Even
got to
saying that,
try.
like
Yeah.
communicating like, "Hey, I want to help you or support you through this process, but I don't know what that is. So if you can help
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
by communicating what you need or what you
And
would
the
like
and the other piece is that
or don't need." Yeah.
I couldn't have told you what I needed back
Mm.
then.
Mhm.
I only know looking,
Yeah.
hindsight, what I needed. And,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I went back in time and I'm like, what did I really need at that moment? Because I want to help people too. I've had
Mhm.
so many people say, my sister just got diagnosed. You know, um, my niece just got diagnosed. My mom, so what?
Mhm.
I don't know what to do. I'm not there in the same city as
Mm.
she is.
Mhm.
What do I do? And I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give for the people who aren't like physically
Yeah.
close, is the encouraging words,
Yes.
because those go a long way.
Mhm.
I had amazing, I really didn't know the tribe of badass people I had around me until that moment. I
Mm.
mean, I had so many people, loud people. So you can love them loudly from
Mm.
wherever you
Mhm.
are. So loving them loudly would be just lifting them up,
Mm.
because they're going to cycle in and out of these feelings. They're going to feel like, crap one day and just like, this is it. Why me? Why we? Why me? Why does this happen to me? Till, oh, I got it. I know I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. No, why me? So it's like
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
constant
yeah.
up and down. I mean, it's
Yeah.
bad. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, roller coaster doesn't even give it justice. But you can love them so loudly from wherever you are. And I had that phone call where I would get a call from one of my girlfriends, and she would say, Trisha, you are going to beat the shit out of this. And I
Mm.
know you are. I've seen it. I know you. This is not going to break you. And
Mhm.
so even if I wasn't receiving it at that moment, those words, you hear them, they go somewhere. So when I was in that dark place, those words are still in my bank. They're still
Mhm.
there. So I can go and
Mhm.
I can pull some of those things out and I can say, oh yeah, Bianca said this, Joe said this.
Mhm.
All these people, all these uplifting words, I had all of that stored. So you
Well,
can't get enough of that stuff.
yeah, I think you're spot on that, and that I don't know what it is, but I think there's a certain type of power release when other people believe in us, or it just
Yes.
like helps fortify our vision of like being coming out the other side and that sort of thing. Like, is there anything that you'd want people to know about your cancer journey or about going on the other side or what helped you get through beyond like the support from loved ones or
It was happen into what I was born with. We are
mm,
all born that resilience and with
mm,
that strength. We just got to go find it, because
mm,
again, like I said in the beginning, it's not
mm-hmm.
going to do us any good for everybody around us to believe in us if we don't believe in us
Yeah, we
first.
have to believe in
And that
ourselves.
applies to every aspect of
Yeah.
life, not just cancer.
Yeah.
You know, how many times, and we're all so guilty of this, women specifically, we just spoke about it. People are like, you're so awesome. And I hear that a lot. I'm like, Trisha, you're so inspiring. And for the last 8 years, I'm like, oh, what do I just think they're being nice. And I'm like, well, if it's been 8 years and they're still saying it, maybe it's
It's
maybe
true.
I am
Maybe it's true.
inspiring
It
them
is
a
true. You
little
are
bit. So,
inspiring.
how, if I'm inspiring them, keep doing what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can, turn up the volume a little bit on it and be more
You already
helpful.
are.
So, we have to believe that we are all of the things that everybody is saying when they're, you get those calls and people are telling you, you're going to kick this thing's ass. You are going to come out of the, on the other side of this, and you're going to be better. You're going to be stronger. You're going to be, more put together, and you are going to be different. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to be different in a better way. And that's what I want anybody that hears this is that's going through a battle with cancer or any challenges in life. Start by believing in yourself
Mm-hmm.
because it's there. Every single one of us was born with it. You got
Mm-hmm.
to remember that. Remember who created you, why you were
Mm-hmm.
created. You were created for a purpose. And then you got to let other people carry you when you can't carry yourself. So do
Mm.
not think that you have to do it all by yourself. We were
Mm.
not meant to do anything
Mm-mm.
by ourselves. That's why there's like how many billions of people on this planet. We're,
Yeah.
why don't we
I know.
use some of those people to our benefit?
You know,
They're there.
I was kind of like giggling on something a little bit the other day because, like, I fear losing my independence, and I kind of like, and I am independent in a way, in like some of the traditional senses of it. But I'm like, actually, though, we're as a society and a culture and humans, like, we're so interdependent that the idea of even being
Yeah.
independent is like kind of absurd. But I had that hyper
Well,
independent trauma response in a way, is, and so like,
yeah,
but we're all connected. And
we are
so
all
we don't
connected,
have
but
to be islands. We don't
the
have to, we could,
more we're
yeah.
connected social media and
Mm-hmm.
electronically, the more I feel like we isolate.
Mm,
It's bad. I know that I hear a lot about how isolated we are becoming as a
mm,
society. And I think that we fall into this belief that we have to handle our difficulties and challenges alone
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because everybody else's life is perfect, right?
Mm,
Everybody else is, they're picture perfect, everything is going in sync. And the reality is, it's not.
mm-mm.
It's not like that. And it's amazing to me. Sometimes I will see a social media post and it's a friend that maybe I haven't seen in a while. So it looks like everything is perfect. And I'm like, let's get together, let's have dinner. So we have
Mm-hmm.
dinner and I'm like, fuck, all that's going on in your life. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
it's a post.
Yep.
It's meant to um give you a highlight in
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah. I like to
And
think of it as a scrapbook.
nobody wants to be, I'm not saying get out there and just share your sob stories. Nobody wants to see that either. But social media, it's like a show. And
Mm-hmm.
people try to be authentic and I try to be
Me
authentic,
too.
but it's a highlight no matter how we look at it, the deep dark stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So again, going back to giving our loved ones and friends that space to share their feelings regardless of what they're going through, whether it's a, an illness or
Mm-hmm.
a divorce or
Mm-hmm.
a bad breakup, or they lose their job or they're switching jobs, or whatever it is that they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Giving people space to share their emotions without judgment,
Mhm.
without sharing.
Yeah.
What somebody tells you in private, obviously what I'm telling you right now, we're broadcasting
Yeah,
wherever,
yeah.
but somebody is
It's
in an
private.
intimate, right? Don't
Hold it sacred.
respect that.
Yeah.
Respect that because they feel safe enough with you to share those emotions and
And
respect
that's an
that in that
honor.
way.
That's an
It
honor.
really is. It
Yeah.
really is. And you should think of anyone sharing conflicting emotions with you in that way.
Mhm.
That it is an honor and that you should hold it near and dear to your heart. And don't you got
Mm-mm.
to build that quality, that character in
And the
yourself.
integrity. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I know social media stuff keeps coming up. I've talked about it. I'm like, but I do think that podcasts and like this conversation today is definitely offering an authentic, like,
Oh, for
just
sure.
conversation around like this journey. But it probably will be shared on social media.
I'm not talking down about
No,
social media.
no,
I'm
no,
just
because, well,
saying,
it has
I'm like,
pros and cons, right?
just like
It,
everything else. Everything else has.
mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's all, just
Mm-hmm.
trying to use it for
But used
good.
with
And
discernment. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And like, if you catch yourself like in the comparisonitis, like pause, maybe like take a break, and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Cause there's always things going on behind the scenes. Cause I'm typically known for being so, I don't always, I'm joyful. I'm angry. I'm sad at times. Like I experience it all, but my
You're
default is
human. You're human.
joy. Yeah. Or like being happier. But there's times in my life where I don't broadcast that on the other side of it. I share openly and honestly and in my book, but not everybody's going to read a book. But and even some of the authentic or vulnerable moments that I've put on Instagram before, even those have a cute picture. But
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I might be giving you a like long caption about like some rough moment or some lesson or
But here I
insight that I've
am.
learned. But I do have,
But here
but
I
I
am.
like the photo that I'm posting. Yeah.
That's just the
Just being
reality.
true.
And
Yeah.
it's perfect. I mean, it's all
Yeah.
fine. It's all great.
Yeah.
It's all good.
But I like too that you said that with just offer a shared or a safe space for people to express without the judgment and not placing like how you would respect or how you would
Yes.
respond or act in that scenario on them and just like be kind
Oh,
of like a compassionate
full
observer,
circle. Let's
compassionate
right.
listener,
We're coming
because
full circle.
I've done that before. Yeah.
This is what you said that this lady told you about and the acupuncture about,
Oh, about which part?
right? About them kind of telling, giving you them their opinions
Well,
about what she should do.
yeah, well, she just said that, her patients or clients with breast cancer
Mm,
only really
yeah,
wanted to hear from advice from people who had been through it or had walked or seen the other side.
because everybody had an opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
And like so and with my grief journey, she was saying that to offer space or with the grief or like loss in general, people want to work with or feel safety in someone that's experienced it closely and been and walked that walk to help show them the path too.
yes, and
Or just even if that path is just support.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm always available. I don't know everything, but
Mm-hmm.
I will always share what I know and what
Mm-hmm.
was helpful to me. Again, it was me.
Mm-hmm.
We're all different. A
Mm-hmm.
similar, I mean, you could have the exact same diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
this exact same treatment plan, and the same outcome, but it's all going to be different for every single person because that's just how we're made. We are
Yeah.
not in our chemistry is so
Like little
unique.
snowflakes.
Yes. So it doesn't, I mean, you can't assume that because this person
Mm-hmm.
had these side effects from the treatment that you're going to have the same. You can't
Mm-hmm.
expect that you had the same reaction. You're going to have the same reaction to medications. And, you're just not going to have the same experience. So you got to keep that in mind too.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's comforting to hear other people's story because it gives you hope.
Oh,
I
for
had
sure.
other women, who were survivors for maybe, 5 years, and I was starting the journey, and that at least go, okay, I can probably get to 5 years. I can probably get to 5 years.
I can do it. And I
And
think it's important
now,
to have those vision totems.
yes, you've got to. So,
Mm-hmm.
so now at 8, I'm like, okay, I just heard someone say he's 27.
Oh,
I
nice.
was their mother was just celebrating 27, and that was like one of the first. We're like everybody was commenting in the breast cancer community. Thank you for sharing. That gives us so much hope because I
Yes.
mean that's a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful, beautiful something to hold on to
Mm-hmm.
when we're feeling
For
scared.
sure. Because I know you and I have talked a little bit about like the PTSD or
Yes.
scanxiety too that can come from like,
Hmm.
okay, you made it to that 5 year mark and, but like still bringing up those moments of anxiety or fear every time you go back to a doctor's office.
Oh, it doesn't even have to be to the doctor's office. It can
Oh.
be like, I'm rubbing my neck and I feel a
Mm.
lymph node, and I'm like, I mean, it takes some energy to
Mm-hmm.
dismiss that and go, okay, Trisha, it's not cancer. It's not cancer.
Mm-hmm.
If I get a cold sore, is that
Mm-hmm.
cancer? It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
seriously. I mean, it's like,
mm-hmm.
and everyone has different levels of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky that I don't let myself go there a whole lot. I keep myself very busy in that way.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I can pretty much cut that off pretty quickly and go, that's
Mm-hmm.
not, stop thinking like that. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, if I go to the doctor's office and it's not gone away, don't
Mm-hmm.
dismiss it. I'm not saying that. If you got something that's not right,
Mm-hmm.
definitely have it checked out, but don't start deep diving right away and go, okay, this is it. I'm done. Don't do
Yeah.
that
Yeah. No.
because
Yeah.
it's not how it works.
Medical, I mean, I get the whole, I mean, medical anxiety too from a different perspective too. Or just like not, or just like, dentist and doctor's office, like, it produces an anxiety on a certain level for me too. And not, I haven't had one of those like scary diagnoses.
Yeah.
But I
Nobody likes a
hope,
doctor. Nobody likes the
yeah.
Nobody's like, yay, I get
It
to go
doesn't
see
have
my
to be
doctor.
so sterile looking. Can it be like a little more warm, a little more? I think of like my gyno exams. I'm like, can we just do this a little bit like more inviting? I think there are some places like more holistic places starting to offer certain services in that way,
Oh, yeah?
versus like
Interesting.
cold stress, But I have a few questions. I know we've gone a little bit over a thing, but I have spaciousness. But there's a
Okay.
few questions that I would love to ask you,
Okay.
and like for us both to share some for this, like, and wrap up.
Okay.
And one of them is, do you see like through it all, like through all the ups and downs, that cancer fortified you today?
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I say it every, I shout it from the mountaintops. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was part of my journey. It has helped me be a better mom, a
Mm.
better wife, a better sister, a better friend, a better Trisha. It's just, I mean, it has enhanced my life so much. And that is like this, it's crazy to say it out loud. And
Mm-hmm.
my family would get so mad at me because I've said this for many years. I said it, I think right after the treatment, I was like, this was a blessing. And Jeff would go, stop saying that. It's not a blessing. I
Mm.
mean, he would get really angry at me for
Yeah.
saying it. I'm like, okay.
You
But
gotta look at
I
it through
really,
my lens.
he did not like me saying that at
Yeah.
all. But he gets it now. He gets it
Mhm.
now because I think I've had several years to articulate it in a way that he can
Mhm.
actually process it.
Mhm.
But it was not something anybody wanted to initially hear. But yes,
Mhm.
you're to that question.
Yeah. I'd totally say cancer, I would say cancer and grief fortified me for sure, made me stronger, and maybe in the capacity to hold space for others, because there was a long time it's like, why am I experiencing so much loss and pain at such an early age? And
Mm.
I've had, several moments where, whether it was like with an ex partner of mine, ex boyfriend, we for a 4.5, 5 years, like through that relationship, he lost his mom. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
okay. I was like, well, I was like, I get it. There's just something that's like, oh, this is why. This is part of, at least partially why, because I can understand on a deeper level and know that some days he's going to want to talk about it or not talk about it. And I knew how to communicate that and be like, hey, just let me know. Like, if you want me to be here, if you want me to go outside of the room, if you want me to go to my place, like before we moved in together. And just so
You
I kind
got
of
it.
knew a little bit in that dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
then would you, so as I wrote also down, do you wish you had done anything differently?
That is interesting to think about. I think I would have probably worked a little bit harder to educate myself about how to make
Mm,
a safer space for my family, how
mm,
to make it safer for my kids to express. And I don't think I was aware of if I was approachable. I wasn't
mm,
really in a space that I could really tune into where they were with all of this.
mm-hmm,
And that's probably the only thing I think I would do different, because I don't think that we've had an opportunity to really uncover any trauma that they experienced in any of this. And I don't know if after the fact it's going to be harder for them to identify what that might be. If there's anything,
mm-hmm,
only they can speak to that. And I won't speak for them,
mm-hmm.
certainly. But yeah, I think that that would be the thing I would do different. And you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely something I would do differently. I would just spend more time. Like, just spend more time. I would,
Time.
and yes, and you're never gonna regret any
No,
time that you spent. And
with your
I,
loved ones,
yes,
never.
and I know I moved from California to Texas, and but there's a piece of me or an element that it's like I would have loved to have spent more time for sure.
We can't regret either. Neither one of us can regret it
Mm-mm.
because it put us
Mm-hmm.
where we're, I mean, I do believe that all of that, I don't think that me educating myself and making a little more space for my kids would have, because I think that would have been
Mm-hmm.
beneficial for everyone. And certainly
Mm-hmm.
spending more time with your dad, he would have enjoyed that more. I know you would have learned and
Mm-hmm.
been able to have even more memories of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we just can't second
Oh
guess
no, oh
ourselves.
yeah. And I don't mean that in the sense of like beating myself up, but I mean that in if someone is also like
Yeah,
have someone with any kind of cancer or
yeah,
something like that. Like a girlfriend of mine, when we first met, my dad had been gone maybe 2 years, and then I want to say at the beginning of 23 is when she lost her dad. And
oh,
like before, whenever he had been diagnosed and was like cancer, I made sure to tell her, I was like, hey, you're never going to regret any time that you spend with him. So like do what you can to spend the time.
exactly. And this
Mhm.
comes back to what I said about being a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I did not regret any of that time. That is the most precious gift you can give your loved ones is time, your
Mhm.
time and attention. Because you can be in the room and not be present and not be giving them any attention.
Yes.
That's a subject is kind of going around my house right now about being present but not
Yeah.
present.
Yes, put the
So I
phones
mean,
down.
yeah. so so yeah, we will never
Mhm.
ever regret giving time to our loved ones. What we will regret spending time on is petty, arguments and just things that insignificant things in life that don't matter. So
Mhm. And I will say, like, now, like, there are moments even, like, whenever we were hanging out, like, going to dinner or something, and it makes me laugh today, but I remember being so like, "I've never met a person more stubborn than me,
uh,
and it's you." Looks like we
to
were
your
arguing
dad.
on we were, like, arguing on which, restaurant to go to, and now
Yeah.
that I think about it, I'm like, we did. I'm like brought or like there's an influx of memories of like restaurants that we would go to, but that day particularly that I was coming up, it's like had to be his restaurant, and I'm glad
Oh
now
yeah,
that
it
it
had to be
was
his. Because
his
you were
restaurant.
traumatized. You've got some suppressed trauma about him making you go to that restaurant.
No, or it was just like, why not this one? Why can't we just go down the road? But we did go to a lot of movies, and I did, and just did like
Aw,
cute little dad and daughter dates. So, um,
that's
things I would
beautiful.
never take back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that it's like having a refresher. Thanks. Yeah. The last question, and I think I might have asked this in kind of in the do you wish you had done anything differently, just maybe phrased differently, is like what would you change if anything about the experience?
What would I change differently? I think I probably would have been a little more vocal with everything
Mm,
that I was.
mm,
I've become more vocal just over
mm,
the last few years about my story. I shared from day one.
mm-hmm,
I think from the time I had the biopsy, I
mm-hmm,
was posting about it and sharing very openly about what was going
mm-hmm,
on. But I think that my confidence in my story and my confidence in the need to share my story, I think all of that has grown. And if I'd have known that in the beginning, I think that I would have put a little more effort into sharing the story and writing all of my story down because
mm.
you know how unorganized I am. I've got like this much of one journal written in. I got one this much in another journal. And so I've got all these different notebooks and journals and I'm being more organized with my thoughts. So I think that would have helped me to this point be able to share
Mm,
more of what I was going through because, at that time, at the moment though, you're just trying to stay above
mm-hmm.
water. You're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that you don't go down in those dark places and you're there doing what you need to do. But it just, everything I went through made me appreciate everything so much more. I don't know that everybody knows this, but you lose, one of the things chemo does is you lose taste. It's
Mm.
like you don't, so you get this metallic metal kind of taste in your mouth with it. And so for a few months, I couldn't, and coffee is like, I'm obsessed with coffee. I love the
I
taste.
am
I mean,
too.
coffee ice cream, coffee flavor, anything,
Yes, yes.
coffee, coffee, coffee. So
Yes.
I couldn't, I
Coffee
mean, it
overnight
was like,
oats.
it tasted like metal coffee is what it tastes like, and
No.
food. It was like, oh, and that took a while to go away.
Mm,
So, things like that, it just made me appreciate my coffee every morning. Now I'm like, oh my
mm.
God, this tastes so good.
Savoring it.
You know,
Mm,
S- the other thing, laying in bed um, after chemo treatments, your entire body feels like, what is the description I would use? It's like the most uncomfortable. You just can't find comfort anywhere. It's an ache that
mm.
is indescribable. And every morning I wake up and my bed feels so good. And I'm like, oh, this feels so good. And it's just
Ah.
so comfortable, and you don't, until you experience something like that. So the experience, has just made me appreciate all the little things in life that
Mm-hmm.
we take for granted every day. And, we need to make more of an effort
Mm.
to take notice of what we
Mm-hmm.
have every day, the little bitty things, like how the
I
coffee
agree.
tastes, the
Yeah.
bed,
Mm.
all of that stuff. So, we have a lot. We just have to open our eyes and see it. I think there's a
Mm-hmm.
quote, something like, maybe I'm
Treating
sorry.
every no, I'm thinking it's like that's a very tantric way to approach life too, is like the
Yeah.
every moment sacred, like just like really savoring the moments, like whether that's with I'm thinking of coffee right now, but it could be coffee, it could be a glass of wine or shared conversations like this one. It could be, like
Yes.
just now I'm like, okay, I want to feel the like feathers in my duvet, and just like snuggle in there, or like the
That's
warmth.
what I would
Mm-hmm.
recommend everybody do. Do that for Trisha today. Go
Yeah.
home
Oh, nice.
and feel your bed and let yourself be present and feel the softness like it's a cloud.
Mm, mm,
I know your bed, feel your pillow, and then take your coffee in the morning and think of me and your
mm-hmm.
dad
And write
and think
down
of
three.
us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Write down
Write
those
down your
gratitude.
gratitude.
I love
I
that. Is there anything else that you'd want to share?
think we covered it all,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, I think we did too. And I would just echo you on being vocal of my emotions or feelings. I just would
Yes.
like express it more.
Yes.
That's how, yeah, just express their emotions and love and that sort of thing. All right. Well, you can
Yes.
find Trisha on Instagram at Flexing After Cancer, correct?
Yes. Flexing
And
after
I'll put it
cancer.
in the show notes and all of that stuff too. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
honey.
Yes. All right.
Bye.
Bye.